have known Vikram Sampath as Savarkar's biographer, as an eminent historian, and like I keep saying, as a crusader to fill all the gaps left in Indian history. But today we are going to talk to Vikram about something else. We are going to talk to Vikram about this new foundation of his, Foundation for Indian Historical and Cultural Research. Vikram, first up, what is the aim behind this foundation?
Yeah, thank you, Deep. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
The germination of the idea of this foundation came from the fact that, all the time people from the non-left side, we keep complaining, ruing about the fact that, the history has been distorted by Marxist, leftist historiography. We also complain that the government is not doing enough to remove these distortions. So other than just complaining and complaining in our private cocoons, in our own conclaves and lit fests and drawing room discussions, I thought nobody is really doing much about it. Right. A few of us who are writing books and so on, there's just that much of the needle that you can push. But I thought an institutionalized mechanism needs to be put in place so that this can have a very structured change that we can bring about in the non-government, private, apolitical kind of a space. So that's how FIHCR, the Foundation for Indian Historical and Cultural Research, the idea came about, where I keep saying always that the only answer to distorted history is generating more and more and more scholarship. Because today, you see, usually in all our lit fests or in our discussions, people will cast aspersions on historians like Professor Romila Thapar or Professor Irfan Habib, Dr. D.N. Jha, all the laundry list of all these people. But they have left behind a body of immense scholarship, and many of them who are still around, they are still continuing to produce that scholarship. So the response to that is not that you shout down Romila Thapar's speech in the India International Center last year, what happened. The response is to give an intellectual counter. Right. Even to this day, the books that they have written are the ones that are prescribed in universities. These are the books that, for the UPSC exams and all of that, people are reading the same. So where is that alternative version of ancient India or medieval India or modern India or the freedom struggle that we have produced? And today the climate, the political, social climate in India is conducive to this. Let's not always look at the government for help. Can we as individuals do something? So that it was with this intention that late last year the foundation was set up. And being from Bangalore, the startup capital of India, so to say, a lot of interested corporates were willing to support this venture. Particularly, I would stress on Mr. Bhavesh Agarwal and the Ola Foundation, right. Very passionate about nationalism, about history, and how we need to get back to our roots. So with his support and a lot of help from Ola Foundation, we managed to set this up. The foundation, the main aim of that is to foster new scholarship in Indian history, one that is fact-based, one that is meticulously researched, non-ideological, not going into it with any preconceived ideas, to produce that alternative scholarship, I think, which we so direly need in India.
Right. It's interesting you use words like fact-based, yeah. And that is grounded in gravitas in a certain sense, and also which is academically, yeah. Which could be put forth, yeah. as well researched works. What comes to mind is Arun Shoury's Eminent historians. Would you then concede that there have been in the past 10 years, some work, if not a lot of work that has come up from the non-left side, which won't pass muster because perhaps they have been written in a hurry? And do you think that's also a problem?
No, I would not generalize that all of them won't pass
No, not
muster.
all of them.
Yeah.
But some of them, or
yeah, I mean that is obvious. I mean even the left, there is riffraff that produces all kinds of things.
a lot of riffraff. Yeah.
So I'm sure on this side also there are a lot of people like that. But there have been numerous, eminent writers and ideologues who've sprung up. You being one. There is Sanjeev Sanyal, Sai Deepak, Anand Ranganathan. So many of them, Kushal Mehra, Harsh Madhusudan. So many of them have written books which are largely, being consumed by people, which is a good thing. I mean, and including mainstream publishers are coming forward to publish these. I think 15 years ago, to think even my books on Savarkar, whether a Penguin would have gone ahead and published them is quite a, it's doubtful. So I think these, the winds of change have been there. And you quoted Mr. Arun Shourie, who I really idolized.
Yes.
And I think as a child, while growing up, I read almost all his books, and the clinical manner in which he goes to the heart of the issue. On many issues, I may not agree with him, but the way he set the narrative on many of these, the world of fatwas, or worshipping false gods, on harvesting souls, all these books were, I think, milestones and landmarks, and they were operating at a time which was so hostile,
very hostile,
very
yes.
hostile. But I think our generation, or our crop of new writers and intellectuals, to get stuck with only Arun Shourie and keep quoting that, as I said, in our literature festivals everywhere, we draw the data points from Arun Shourie's book and then keep regurgitating the same thing. What are you doing after that? I think
yes,
that
also
is
because time has passed.
Time
there
has
are new
passed.
realities.
Yeah, and you can't keep on complaining all the time. You have to be the change that you want to see.
Right. What are the, if I can push you a little bit about the nature of the people, your academics you're looking for, what are you looking for in academics, in writers?
So I'll just give an overview of what the various verticals that we have within the foundation. So the one major vertical is a fellowship model. We've named it after Sir Jadunath Sarkar, the most one of the most eminent nationalistic historians, along with R.C. Majumdar, Sar Desai, and Sitaram Goyalji, and so many others, Dharampal, and so on. So Jadunath Sarkar Fellowship for Indian History, which we'll be announcing on an annual basis. So every year this fellowship is going to be announced around May, June of the year. And this is open to all Indian nationals, not necessarily who have a degree in history or anything. Anybody who's minimum a graduate, who has a proven track record of research and writing, even if they have samples of writing and so on. And we had given out a nationwide advertisement. We got very good response, 250 proposals that came. We went through, shortlisted, and 8 of them have been selected. Right. And as part of the fellowship, we plan to give them a substantial stipend of about 15 lakhs for the course of the year. And a lot of mentoring and guidance that we're providing to them. And with the ask that at the end of that fellowship, they need to come out with a publish-worthy manuscript.
Right.
So 8 books, 10 books added every year. So in 10 years, we have a corpus.
And that's all you ask for. That you produce a good book, well-researched book.
And we're giving you money to do that. I mean, none of us who wrote books ever got money for it.
I wish when I started writing, I knew you and you had this fellowship. Yeah.
You can still apply next year.
I will.
So this year we've had a very interesting mix in the first batch of the Jadunath Fellows. We have Aarti Tikku, the journalist who's writing a very fascinating account of Nehru's India versus Modi's Bharat, contrasting the 2 longest serving prime ministers on various parameters: economy, security, Jammu Kashmir policy, social cohesion, and so on. We have another journalist, Arshia Malik, as a Kashmiri Muslim. She's also putting work out on how do we integrate the Indian Muslims into this emergent Indic civilizational resurgence that we have. Then there is Chandrachud Ghosh, already a established author, who's doing something maybe will be of interest to you. He is talking about Bengal Renaissance and the communist takeover. So almost 200 years of Bengal history till the time of the early decades of this century, where communism totally ruined Bengal. So a critical analysis of that. We have a very young man from Assam called Nabarun Barua, who is doing the history of Assam, the Kamrup region, prior to the Ahoms. So that entire, right from the Puranic and the Mahabharat era, what was Assam known as, and so now there's a lot of insidious elements who say it's not a Hindu, the Hindu nature of the Northeast, particularly Assam, is getting stripped off. So to show that this is still very much rooted in that Hindu civilization. Along with that, we have a young IAS aspirant, Jasraj Singh, who's writing on, he's a Sikh from Patiala, and he is writing about the Sikh history and how the teachings of the gurus and so on are so deep rooted in Indic consciousness, and so this entire claim of Khalistan, all of that being something totally outlandish. And then we have also 3 people who are professionally historians, are on the way to become one. Professor Soumya Day, who's a professor at Rishihood University, who's doing work on the Hindu concept of kingship. Okay. And as a rebuttal to Marxist historiography, which looks at kingship only as being oppressive. Right. We have Dr. Lakshmi Arya, who's the Dean of History at the RV University in Bangalore, who's talking about essential religious practices. And does every culture, look at religion? Every culture need not have a religion, and what does that mean for constitutional jurisprudence? And one student who's still finishing his PhD, Shan Kashyap, who's doing an interesting work on the history of the history textbook controversies. Okay. So right from the colonial time till probably the NDA government. So it's a vast array and a large cross section of people who are doing very different topics. Along with that, under the fellowship, we were also very fortunate that the Sringeri Kudali Samsthan, they were very keen to participate in this and support the foundation. So they are running one fellowship in the name of one of the previous Pithadipatis, Sri Sachidananda Saraswati, and so as part of that we have given a fellowship to Pratishtha Mukherjee, who is a professor again at Rishihood University, and she is going to do work on the temples as custodians of Bharatiya culture. What is the role of temples in temple economy, spirituality, architecture, the art, culture, everything that it fostered. So wide range of, so almost 9 books are in the making by August 2025. So this is one huge vertical which is on fellowships which we are running. There's another vertical on projects where we are incubating research-based, intense research-based projects proactively from our side, which will be incubated in universities. So the pilot project which we're doing is with the Nalanda University, and that's on the history of the rise and fall of Buddhism in India. Okay. And so, it so happens, Deep, that most often you can be a historian of ancient India and not know a word of Sanskrit or the other classical languages of ancient India. You can be a medieval historian, not know Persian, Arabic. So for a modern historian today to learn all these languages, it may take a lifetime. Yeah. So what we thought of was, can we have a multidisciplinary group where there's a modern historian along with an archaeologist? Historians and archaeologists never talk to each other. Yeah. So can we bring them all to the same platform? Also linguists and philosophers. So for this project we have, along with me and Abhas, we also have people like Professor Kannan and Dr. Meera, who are Sanskrit professors, and from Nalanda University, 2 individuals, 2 professors, Dr. Pranshu Samdarshi and Dr. Pooja Dabral, who are experts in Pali and Prakrit and Buddhist history, Tibetan and so on. So we'll be analyzing primary sources in the original, not depending on translations. And one Dr. Tosha Banta Pradhan there, who is an archaeologist. So all of us are literally brainstorming to see how we can, some of the common issues, these may be historical themes, but they have contemporary relevance. So every time you talk of Islamic conquest, someone will come up and say, oh, but Hindus also destroyed the Buddhist structures. But is there a theological sanction for that? What are the 3 examples that they gave of Pushyamitra Shunga or Mihirakula and Shashanka from the Gauda dynasty of Bengal? Are there actual evidences of that? Are there details? What do the primary records say? A lot of it is lost in translation, either because you don't know the language or willfully you mistranslate.
Yes.
So this is what we are undertaking, and it will be a year and a half long exercise, and at the end of it you will have a book series which will come out. For this Buddhism project we have about 4 books in line, and also we want to start an academic journal where all the work that our fellows or these research scholars are doing, it also gets into the academic field.
Right.
So this was another big vertical that was there. The third one, which I am particularly very keen to see how it develops, is called Yuva, where we are trying to reach out to children 6 to 12 years of age and young adults 12 to 20 years.
That's a fellowship I can't apply for.
No, we are creating content for the children, not giving fellowship to the children. Because catch them young. And the way history is taught in schools, so boring, insipid, you just mug up dates and memorize things. But it is only when you grow up we realize it is such an important discipline which shapes our sense of identity and belongingness and nationalism. A couple of children's authors we have already spoken to. We're giving out a lot of help to bring these projects to shape. 3 authors for this year: Pradeep Chakravarti, there is Mala Kumar and Vijendra, who are writing children's books, illustrated books and so on. We're also trying to see if we can do animated videos, things like that, where you talk to this Gen Z, Alpha, whatever that is, in the language that they understand, and make history storytelling. So can you tell it in an interesting manner in Instagram Reels, whatever format they understand. So that is one aspect. And the last vertical is something also which is very close to my heart, which is creating a digital humanities corpus. And earlier I had established what was known as the Archive of Indian Music, which is perhaps India's first digital sound archive for vintage gramophone records. Gramophone recording started in 1902, but today all those 78 RPMs and all that, they are found lying in chor bazaars and raddi shops almost at the verge of destruction. So as part of AIM, Archive of Indian Music, we had collected about 15,000 records from these shanties, restored them, a lot of support then by Mr. T.V. Mohandas Pai, and that's how we set this up. And we've digitized it and put all of those which are out of copyright onto SoundCloud. So that sitting in the confines of and luxuries of your homes, you can access these recordings. These are not only of classical Hindustani Carnatic music, folk music, theatre recordings, early cinema recordings, and also voices of leaders like Gandhi and Tagore, Subhash Chandra Bose, all of that. It's like Voices of India in one portal where you can listen to this. So that also we have now integrated it under FIHCR, and using, since Ola is also coming up with their own AI tool Kritrim. So using at some point stage we want to use modern technology to see how you can digitize manuscripts, translation of some of the manuscripts, the back-end models. I think they are still building in various languages including Sanskrit and all of that. So can we use that to actually, in the West I think it is used very commonly. If a manuscript is cut into half and you're not able to read the rest of it, through an AI back model you can at least do some kind of first draft of a translation or prediction as to what it could have meant. So we're trying all these various things. So as you know, as you can envisage, it is a huge work.
Big bouquet of things you're doing.
Bouquet of things, and we're just 3-4 months old and so much has already been accomplished. I've managed to put a very committed team together. Rohan, who handles the communications, there is Satyajit and Amrita, who handle the fellowships, there's Sudhanshu, who is a part of the projects team along with Abhas, there's Anuradha Srinivasan who and Rasika, who handle the Yuva program. So all of them working as a team to ensure that the objectives are met, and next year by this time at the Pondy Lit Fest, many of our fellows should be there to present their books and talk to you.
All very compelling research topics, Vikram. It's a personal question. What had struck me about you before we got to meet and become friends was the fact that as a writer, as a researcher, as a historian, you are not somebody who'd avoid the dark chapters of history, or who'd necessarily write or fine tune his research to fit a narrative. You are somebody who would, I remember we had a conversation later about Tipu, and you said that there are some good aspects to Tipu. There are a lot of things also which are unpalatable, and you don't plan to leave either one out. So when you now as a mentor, when you are doing so much, would you extend, and I hope you do, would you extend the same liberty to people you are mentoring to go with their research, to go where their research takes them and not fit into a particular narrative?
Absolutely. I think there is, we are going even into the projects we are doing, this Buddhism and all that, with a complete empty slate. Let's let the primary sources, let the archive speak, and you don't have to retrofit history for today's consideration.
Yes, because of course, and I also know for a little work that I do, that has been one of the that's our grouse against Marxist historians, because they have retrofitted. They have looked at history, they have interpreted history in a way that suits their ideology. So when we are rewriting, some of us are rewriting history, not rewriting history, writing history perhaps the right way. Right way. We should not make the same mistake.
True. Very, very true.
Even if there are inconvenient truths.
And I think there you have stalwarts like Jadunath Sarkar and R.C. Majumdar, Sardesai, Bhandarkar, V.K. Rajwade, all of these people, and they could do this ironically even in British colonial times. It's only that after independence, sadly,
something went horribly wrong.
The entire nationalist school of historiography was literally snuffed out. And people who held contrarian views. Today, in the age of social media and information, and where everyone can publish books, and the government stranglehold is not there on anything, you can still survive without being a part of the academia, which I willfully decide not to be a part of, so that I can.
But you are. I mean, why do you say you're not part of the academia?
I'm not a tenured professor in any
you're
university.
You're not a tenured professor, but I think you're a solid voice for
Thank you.
both in academia and in publishing.
But I've not joined the academy, so to say, despite my PhD and all of that, because of this fact that I really guard my independence very ferociously. I don't want my voice to be hijacked by anything that binds me into some confinement. I think scholarship can nurture only when there is freedom, where the mind is free and there is no fear. So I think that is very important. I pity some of our predecessors on whose shoulders I think we stand today, and who actually under very trying circumstances, Arun Shourie and all these people, whether it was Sitaram Goyalji or Dharampal.
So much work may have been lost. We may not even have known about that.
People lost fellowship. Their careers were destroyed, fellowships and promotions and all of this. Despite that, they produced that corpus in whatever manner. Now it's, I think, our responsibility to build on that and not just keep harping on the same thing. And as you rightly said, I think a balanced view is what a reader is also looking. Every citizen of India is not divided into right and left. I think there's a vast center space.
Which you occupy. Because I have seen in Litfest, not Pondy, but in several other spaces, when I heard you, there were some dissenting voices even from our side. And tough questions that you had to face, that why did you include a particular person, if you remember what I'm talking about.
Of course.
But you have held your ground and have said, no, but why not?
Correct.
So
if you're offending both sides, that means you're doing the right thing.
Right. Where does oral history come into all this? And personally, as a historian, you're a trained historian, what do you think of oral history?
It is important, but there are tools and techniques to see how much you can't take it at face value. A lot of sieving through the content you need to do. Even for my book on Brave Hearts of Bharat, a lot of that was oral history, because these 15 heroes and heroines, they were never, many of them not part of documented historiography, at least that which is available today. Rani Abbakka and so on from my state of Karnataka in Ullal. So she is still alive today in the Yakshagana, the Bhutakola dances like the Kantara that is. And there's something like Abbakka is also invoked there, and she's that's how her history, her story remains alive in folk history, while documented history may have erased her memory. So there are numerous such heroes. Similarly, for my forthcoming book on Tipu Sultan, which is called Tipu Sultan, the story of the Mysore interregnum, where I'm trying to document both father and son, Hyder Ali and Tipu, along with documented sources in Persian, French and the British colonial records, the Kannada records, the Marathi Peshwa Daftar documents, all of that, and the French documents. A lot of oral history exists there also of how Tipu massacred the Mandyam Iyengars and their story, because of which they don't celebrate Deepavali even to this day, because they were all 700 people, men, women and children being trampled to death on that day. Similarly, there are voices of the Christians of Mangalore, the Kodavas in Coorg, the Nayars of Malabar. All these need to come. They didn't have a voice. So Marxist historiography, which talks so much about subaltern voices, I think we are the subaltern who are actually bringing many of these voices to the fore. But how much of it you can completely take it at face value, that is also a little bit of a problem.
Right.
For instance, one of my books called on Gohar Jan, India's first commercially recorded artist. She was an Armenian Christian who later converted to Islam, so very Anglo kind of lineage. It's a very fair woman. So every classical musician, Hindustani musicians didn't know much about her before, but one or two old timers who, the common this thing that they would say, वो इतनी गोरी थी कि जब वो पान खाती थी तो you could see the red juice going down her.
So you can't,
this is part of oral lexicon that comes around, but that makes her more like a water lizard than a human being. So it's up to the modern historian to see how much of this you state the facts, but also you to kind of rationalize it. In the Mysore history book, Splendors of Royal Mysore too, I had documented this curse that is there in Talakad to the Vodeyar, because of which the Vodeyar family still remains a crisscross lineage. There is no direct descendants. So for that there is a very strong local belief. There is oral history around it. You go to Talakad, there people talk about it as if it's a matter of fact. But you mention it at the same time as a modern scientific kind of a temper. You also try to rationalize this and say why it might have come and what is the that can offend people nonetheless, but your work is not just to put everything as it is, but give it a certain nuance and texture.
Right. The young minds you would be mentoring are very lucky to have you, but how lonely has your personal journey been as a historian, as Savarkar's biographer, as the writer of Waiting for Shiva? How difficult is it still to attempt subjects that many don't?
That's a nice question, but it's always been a lonely journey, and with complete lack of any kind of institutional support, which is why what I did not get, I'm trying to give that to others. Nobody held my hand. Nobody told me also how to navigate this whole field of landmines, which bombshells going on your face at every step. The kind of vituperative attacks I faced even during the Savarkar biography. There was a gang up and witch hunt, and daily there was some hit job being done, Wikipedia pages being vandalized, court cases happening, all of this, and at that time you realize that you're in this fight all alone. But it is a dharm yudh, and unless you are strong enough. Before I was very, very sensitive about these things. I'm also an artist, considering I've trained as a Carnatic musician. Artists are sensitive people, and I get very, very hurt by these anonymous people who don't even know me to ascribe motives. You're on the payroll of this and that and so on, and it would hurt. Why are they having these, making these remarks? But now I think I've learned to grow a thicker hide, that you're there for a larger cause. I think once you have that goal in mind, the surround noise, the surround sound, it just doesn't matter anymore. I have the goal very clear that before I leave this world, there has to be a body of scholarship which I produce myself. Limited by capacity, I can probably write 4, 5, 10, 15 books before I pop. But before that, can there be other people who can be, put together? So at least the next generation after that doesn't say the same thing that we say, oh, we are still being taught distorted history. There is another option in the menu card.
Right.
It's a multi-cuisine.
Well researched.
Yeah, well researched, not, mumbo jumbo being peddled in the form of scholarship. And you don't always look for government, for other largesse or head. Ekla chalo re, I think that becomes the this one. But at the same time, I must say that the love and the respect, the affection I get from the readers, I think I never expected it. I thought it's a lonely job, research is a lonely job, writing is a lonely job, and then most of the time the publishers also don't do much to put your work out there. Despite that, and I must tell you, when the Savarkar books came, by then I was already an established author with 3 books. I had the Sahitya Academy Award and all of that. But despite that, in my own home city, Bangalore, there were several bookstores which had kept the other books. But they very openly even used to say that we will not pollute our bookstore by keeping Savarkar's books there. So at a time, and media, the kind of censorship, particularly print media, today nobody depends on these things. You give a review, you don't give a review, you don't
doesn't really matter.
It just doesn't matter. I think social media has democratized information, and there's no takedar left anymore that I am the harbinger of all information and rightful this one. So anybody can put it out there, and through that, the Savarkar volumes, they almost 1 lakh of copies that they sold and became national bestsellers. Which was only thanks to my readers. So if they were not there, I would not be here. I would be as lonely. So while the process is lonely, I think I don't feel so lonely because there is a huge pool, and every place I go to, I speak to, especially youngsters, the kind of enthusiasm, the kind of thirst for knowing more, and the awareness that we've been fed wrong things, I think that is extremely, heartening. And all the poison that is coming out of this churn that is happening, it all seems right.
We have spent most of our time talking about Vikram Sampath, the mentor. I'm a big fan of Vikram Sampath, the writer.
Thank you.
So there is of course the Tipu book we spoke about, but what next for Vikram Sampath, the writer?
Let this come out. I'm still undergoing labor pain of giving birth to another. And this year there have been 2 books, Waiting for Shiva, Unearthing the Truth of Kashi's Gyanvapi, which again I think germinated here at Pondicherry by chance last year at the same Lit Fest with Vishnu Shankar Jain's intervention. Quite serendipitously that book happened, and 1 year later, it's quite gratifying to see in just that 1 year, not only has that book been launched here, spoken at the same festival, in 5 months of the book in English coming, it also got translated into other languages, Hindi, Marathi, Telugu and Kannada, and there are underway some in Odia and other languages, Tamil and Malayalam. So that has been a very intense process. In a very short time it had to be done, and Tipu was something that I'd been working on for a very long 3-4 years. I'd been gathering information, so that, and it's quite a bulky book, I must warn the readers already. It is about 3 lakh words, which is running to 940 pages or so, so a tome which you can also use for bodybuilding. So that's still yet to come. It should be out in November 2024. So once that is done, I'll have to see. Of course, I have a long list of ideas in mind. As the writer, you also know many ideas remain ideas in the mind. So till they are actually concretized, best is not to probably even speak about some of these ideas.
Right. The last question, Vikram. I know you're pressed for time, but this is perhaps more for me than for our listeners. When you do this thorough research and you're a trained historian, so when you write about Savarkar, you can perhaps dissociate yourself from the person you're writing about. But when you did your new book, Waiting for Shiva, you're also a devotee. So you're passionately involved with the subject. in this case Lord Shiva, how do you do justice to the book then you're writing? And it's not just about a book about a god. It can also be a historical character which you are very biased, positively biased towards.
Correct.
So this is almost a personal question, and also those of our viewers who would want to write books or already write books. How does that writing process work?
No, I think
when you suppose intensely hate someone or intensely like someone.
Correct. So biographies, particularly if you're writing about a person, I call biographies as almost like a process of falling in love.
Right.
Initially you pick up a subject because you're fascinated by him, her, whatever, and that you're literally, and then there's a long process of you're dating the person where you're trying to know everything about that person, gather all the information, and sometimes your opinion may change, the love affair may break, it may continue. But I think a historian or a biographer, one of the cardinal principles that he or she is called upon is, at the time of committing it to paper, you're expected to you cut off your emotional attachments. Otherwise, there's a very thin line between a hagiography and a biography.
Right.
So you have to present all aspects of the character. Mind you, by the end of it, you would know more about the subject than the subject perhaps himself knew about himself. You have seen a 360-degree view of that person, what others thought of him or her, and vice versa. So a historian is almost called upon to become a moral eunuch, where you are not allowed to take stands. And I think the test of objectivity comes there. Whether have you critically analyzed the sources? Have you critiqued?
It's a tough process.
It's a tough process, but unless you do that, so that's why most of the, even right from the titles of the book, it is just called Savarkar. The book's title is Savarkar. I have not said Veer, Maafi Veer. That's for the reader to make up.
What you.
Similarly, Tipu Sultan. No, I'm not calling him tiger. I'm not calling him tyrant. You please read it, and if you want to switch to either of this, that's
up to you.
Don't infantilize your readers, and you don't have to dumb things down. And right from the title, you don't have to show your prejudice one way or the other. So a historian's job is just to illuminate the archives, bring the material into public domain in as dispassionate a manner as possible, without passing too many value judgments. Because how do you evaluate characters of the past by yardsticks and standards you set today? That's also an important thing to see. Most of them product of their circumstances. So analyzing the context. So I think it's a vast process of putting many strands together and leave the rest to the intelligence of the reader to make up his or her mind as to what their opinion needs to be.
This was wonderful, Vikram. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your books, and also thank you for your mentorship.
Thank you, Deep. Thank you. Wonderful talking to you.